Just to I'm Joe Valenzano, for those of you that don't know me or haven't seen me this week, but I think most of you have been in sessions this week. So I will dispense with this intro really quickly, but I like to start by just expressing my gratitude to the folks who are joining, who in this particular session care a lot about their adjuncts and really want to find ways to better support them, because, you know, even in good years, sometimes they can be difficult to stay in touch with and keep track of. And this isn't what I would call a good year. So it makes it even more challenging. So thank you for your dedication to helping what sometimes are a forgotten group of important people on campus. Thank you to Jane for being willing to set this up and talk to folks and lead the discussion. And also thanks to Fountainhead for sponsoring this whole weekend Monday of the sessions of people getting to interact. I think one of the key things I think folks have really missed is the ability to just talk to each other. Jane and I were just talking about that, and these have provided a really good forum for us to, you know, just reconnect, but also share what we've done that's worked and what we've done that hasn't, and brainstorm ways to make things better for our students and ourselves in the spring. So again, really grateful to everybody. Thank you, Jane. And I really hope you all get something out of this. If you could do me a favor though, and please add your school to your nameplate, that would be really helpful. And that's all I have. Jane, you can take it from here, and I will disappear so that folks need not see me anymore.
Well, before you disappear, Joe, you know, on behalf of everyone, I think I could say thank you so much for organizing this, and thank you also to Susan and everyone at Fountainhead for just helping us out and sponsoring it and giving us this opportunity. Because I think it is, you know, the basic course conference, of course, was canceled back in June, and it's just nice to have this opportunity to connect. And in the interim, and we probably won't be happening in June again. I don't know.
I think there's going to be something's going to happen in the spring, I think.
Yeah.
Probably not in person, probably virtual, but I know there's a group of folks who are working on that.
Oh, great. Yeah, that'll be good, because this is better than nothing, right, everybody? All right, super. Well, thank you. So there's a couple people coming who are going to be late, apparently, so that's fine. This is a nice small group. So if you've been to some of the others, they've been really big, and so we've utilized breakout rooms. But I don't think we need to do that. I think we can just kind of hang out and chat a little bit about what we've experienced this semester. So because again, it's such a small group, I think we could maybe go around and introduce ourselves and talk about. And also just say kind of what your role is in terms of dealing with adjuncts. So I'll start. I'm Jane Pierre-Solonier. I'm the Associate Chair and the Basic Course Director at Emerson College in Boston. So I'm responsible in both roles for hiring and to some extent training faculty, definitely for the basic course, but sometimes also just facilitating, you know, syllabus development and just logistics, dealing with Canvas, stuff like that for other new faculty as well. Marlena.
Marlena Davidson, University of Nebraska at Omaha. Apologies, I was trying to find where to switch my name, and heck if I can figure it out right now.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it either.
Yeah, so sorry that I didn't add my university. And I'm also afraid if I change it, then I won't remember how to move it back. I taught in the communication department for 15 years, but just recently moved to our digital learning office. And I am having a lot of interactions with adjuncts who are really struggling. And I am like feeling their pain, and I hate it. And so I'm like, maybe I can get ideas and like really help those that, you know, aren't getting paid enough and really are putting in that extra effort. Yeah.
Okay, great. Welcome. Richard.
Hey, my name's Rich Murphy. Marlene, it's good to see you. It's been forever since I've seen you, right? Yeah, I'm at McHenry University. Yeah, we have a really small program, but we have a couple adjuncts, and I feel like I dropped the ball this semester, you know, with trying to get everything together. And then at the end of the semester, we got an email saying, hey, check on your adjuncts. And I went, oh my gosh, how are my adjuncts doing? And so luckily I have some pretty pretty solid adjuncts that I'm like 100% confident in. But yeah, just maybe some tips and reminders and some things that maybe we can do to them to make sure that they keep coming back, because finding good adjuncts is difficult.
Can be, for sure. Yes. Lynn.
Hi, so I am surmising that we're saying for universities and maybe a little bit about the context in which we try to support adjuncts. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, it came in after I said it. I apologize. Yes.
No
We
worries.
figured it out though.
I joined late, so thanks to everyone who helped me surmise that. And apologies for joining late.
Oh, no problem.
University of Pittsburgh, on the Pittsburgh campus. And we teach about 55 sections of public speaking each year, including the summer. And this semester we have, I think, 3 adjuncts, 3 part-time faculty. I am the director of public speaking, so part of my task is to support and mentor them along with the other faculty and graduate students that teach that course. So we're doing the hybrid model here at Pitt. They've given it a fancy name, but it's a hybrid model. And most of the support that I did was at the beginning of the semester, as you would expect, when I myself and everyone else who's full-time and who's taught for the university for a while, we're trying to figure out, what's going on, what are we supposed to be doing, what are the policies, how do we teach public speaking in an online format when virtually none of us have ever done that before. So there was some sort of policy kind of onboarding types of issues, and then just becoming familiar with the current hybrid environment, which was, again, a collective endeavor. I've encountered a bit of grading disputes, and so that's sort of one of the things that I'm curious to talk about, and hear what other folks have to say about that and any other kinds of support that they've done.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phil. Phil? I don't know if Phil.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm representative from Fountainhead Press, just listening in
It's
and observing.
Fountainhead, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jane. How are you?
Good. Nice to hear your voice.
Nice to see you and hear your voice as well. Thanks very much for the shout out, but I'm just going to be quiet and observe.
No problem. Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana Trundle. I'm at Prairie State College, and I'm the coordinator of the communication program at Prairie State College. We have a small but mighty group of adjunct faculty members, and for the most part, they're okay and also employed elsewhere full time. So that is kind of helpful to know that they're not all struggling to make ends meet necessarily. But just trying to make sure I'm doing everything I can to support them.
Okay, great. And Meredith?
Hey guys, I'm Meredith Ginn. I'm from Kennesaw State University, which is in Georgia. I am our basic course coordinator. Our basic course is actually human communication instead of public speaking. They are 90-seater sections, so the decision was made to make them all online and all asynchronous. So I have been working with our adjunct faculty who teach the course, many of whom have never taught in an online modality. So it's been really interesting just training them and making sure that they have the support they need. I feel like I've been more IT guru this semester than ever before. So we have about 25 sections of this class, the majority of which are taught by part-timers.
Wow. So people got thrown into the deep end on the asynchronous thing.
Majorly, yes.
How has it gone?
Well, I think it's gone pretty well, but I have been extremely hands-on with lots of reminders and tech tips every week, tons of information overload, probably they would say, but it's a master course. So I was able to copy it, into their LMS sections. So they had all the content built out. It was more knowing how to facilitate, knowing how to grade, knowing all the tools, because a lot of them hadn't necessarily really used D2L much because they were used to always teaching face-to-face.
Okay, great. So I think I got everybody, right? I think everyone else is with Fountainhead. Am I missing anyone? I don't think so. Okay. Why don't we talk a little bit about things that we've done that worked this semester? And it could be something that you've done all the time anyhow, and didn't need to change, or, you know, something that you did, kind of whichever you think. I could say for me, for my group, we do a training in at the end of the summer. And then after that, because they can't get paid, it's kind of, and they're busy working in a million other places. So it's very difficult beyond that. So what I do is I call it an instructor cheat sheet, and I update it every semester. So it's a not super lengthy, but I don't know, maybe a half a dozen pages or more, a little more, of just information and reminders, and just, you know, this is the justification for this assignment, you know, because it's a standardized course. And they get the whole thing in Canvas and stuff like that. But so just kind of teaching tips, technical tips, who to contact if you have a technical problem, all that type of information. So that is helpful. You know, I get good responses from them for that. I have to remind them that they have it sometimes. So there is that. You know, I always give it to them and say, make sure you put this in a, you know, place where you can find it again. But, you know, so having something documented is helpful. Does anyone have anything that they've done that works that they want to share?
I can share. We too in the communication department have a adjunct like half day or kind of like a couple hour training. What has helped us is that we had a shell course for an asynchronous online public speaking course. So that really saved us last March. I would say those are the two big things that we've done or are doing.
Yeah, that seems to work. Is there anyone that doesn't have that in their program, that their programs are not standardized? That's a whole separate can of worms, possibly. The standardization seems to help, but not all colleges are willing to do that. You know, they are really into the academic freedom idea more so than the standardization, and but so the standardization can be helpful. So if people are given something, and as long as it's done well, of course, and it makes sense, then that usually works. Any other things that you do or have done that you think are particularly effective?
This is Meredith again. Two things that I did, one of which was at the request of our school director. She wanted us to have kind of a monthly touch point. So we did that. We use Collaborate Ultra, which is just sort of like Zoom, but it was embedded in our learning management system. So one Friday a month, I called it community collaboration. So we would just kind of meet up and talk about things that were working, things that weren't, questions, concerns, you know, room for improvement. I mean, it's really baffled me how the university just expected all of these adjuncts to know how to teach online when many of them never had a single class online, right? So I feel like that was a really good time together to kind of support one another and navigate some of those questions that I don't even know they have, because I feel like I've been in the online world now for a decade teaching, and I don't even know what they don't know. So that was really helpful. The second thing was our ITS set up just kind of a shell course. We used Desire to Learn, and I made that kind of our collaboration page. So I would post all kind of resources there, in you know, so it was listed with their courses, really easy to find, and people could, you know, post questions there or find documents and class activities and things like that. So it was a good kind of go-to place.
I just heard about Desire to Learn yesterday for the first time. Does it look like, functionality wise, is it like a Blackboard or a Canvas?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Blackboard. I've never used Canvas. So my university is part of the University System of Georgia. So all public universities in the state of Georgia, we all use the same platform, Desire to Learn. So if there was anyone else that you've met with this week, like Valdosta, or that we're all using Desire to Learn.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we've used Desire to Learn as well, but we just actually we just transitioned. It's funny, we were planning to transition to D2L this fall before COVID hit. So we had like the system in place. And so we had to train all of our adjuncts, and myself included, to learn this. And we had to actually move all that training to remote because obviously we couldn't meet. And so it was kind of a mess. But yeah, D2, it's pretty intuitive. It's not. I think it's a pretty good program.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any other success ideas before we get into the challenges?
Yeah. And the challenges will probably take us right out to the end of the meeting. So there are a few things that we did at Pitt in my department. The first is just, and this goes to the standardization topic. The first thing I did was just distribute a 6-page document with all the relevant department policies, course policies, objectives, that kinds of thing, along with resources provided by the university, such as the Center for Teaching's Educational Technology department. And that played a huge role for everybody, full, part-time, whatever rank this academic year, in the summer and even in the spring. So I think that was a useful text just to help the adjuncts understand the sort of policy requirements and the university resources context in which they'd be asked to work. We were fortunate to have 3 folks who have taught for us before, so they had some sense of the Pitt undergraduate student population and some sense of how things go at Pitt. But that document, I think, was nevertheless helpful. The second thing we do is I always ask adjuncts, everybody who's teaching actually that semester, just send me their syllabus so I can just review it, and any comments I have are offered in the spirit of mentorship. So sometimes there's a requirement that your syllabus doesn't seem to meet. Let's see if we can work on how we can make that possible. Other times it's, here's just a general suggestion that you may or may not want to take based on what I see in your syllabus. Sometimes it's a question and I'm genuinely interested in what they've put there to help me understand their teaching. The third thing that I did was I had 2 meetings this semester for all of the public speaking instructors, whether graduate student, part-time, full-time, associate professor, whatever. And that I thought was a really useful exercise because it gave people a chance to actually interact with each other, and a chance for the part-time faculty to meet some of the new folk, the full-time faculty and vice versa, and to give us the sense that we're all in this together. And the purpose of that meeting, apart from the sort of interactive component, was to identify challenges that we were having teaching this course asynchronously and synchronously, and any sort of strategies or solutions or potential solutions that we might have to address those challenges. And then the last thing that I do is just reach out to the part-timers and let them know that I'm available to interact over email or Zoom or what have you, and just let them know that even though I'm not physically present, I am here as a resource, struggling through a lot of this with them, and I'm happy to reflect with them on various issues and how we or they might proceed.
Oh, great. That's a lot of good stuff. And I think they do appreciate that, because I think sometimes it can be difficult. You try to have meetings and trainings and things like that to support people, and then they don't come and you're like, and it's really not that they're not interested in coming. It's that they're flying in a million different directions and stuff like that. So I think they appreciate it, even if they don't get to take advantage of some of the stuff.
Yeah, I think we were lucky, but I went through the entire course schedule and selected possible meeting times and dates that no one was teaching, none of the public speaking instructors were teaching during, and then sent out a doodle poll. And so it took a bit of effort, but it turned out that
Yeah.
it worked in this case.
It's cat herding. It's kind of a delicate balance of, reminding people like, hey, we're here to help you, and we're so grateful that you're teaching these classes and we support you and all these things. But then also trying to also respect the fact that they work other places and only have so much time. So, and Meredith is saying the virtual environment has helped. Yeah, it does really. I mean, did you ever think we'd spend the past 6 months in this modality for so many things? But it has, increased. It does make it more convenient, even though face-to-face, I think, is, better in a lot of ways. The convenience factor with online stuff definitely does help. Lynn, you had mentioned a challenge in terms of grading disputes. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, and this is by no means a widespread challenge. That is to say, quantitatively, I'm not experiencing it as a challenge among several instructors, but it's sort of the gravity of the kind of dispute. So I'm curious if folks are experiencing students sort of feeling a pressure to get, A's, and taking that pressure and basically passing it on to instructors in ways that really question the instructor's capacity to make professional judgments about the work that they are evaluating, right? And that sometimes come across as aggressive or hostile, and it might depend on the perspective. It's hard to interpret words, typed with no emojis and all that kind of thing. But there may also just be some genuine hostility out there, particularly if folks are feeling anxious or if they, are inclined not to respect the instructor for various reasons that could include structural and systemic ones. So, so I'm curious as to whether people have been hearing about or experiencing a particular kind of push for higher grades that seems unfounded, but that nevertheless has to be responded to in some way that balances all potential factors.
Are you hearing from the instructors asking for help, or are you hearing complaints from the students directly?
At this point, both. Yeah, so part of the way Pitt's Dietrich School, where the communication department is housed, sets up its academic integrity procedure is to require that the students talk with their instructors first, but then if that doesn't happen, they go to the chair or the chair's representative. And in my case, for public speaking, my chair has deemed me his representative.
Lucky you.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, great. Anyone have any thoughts about dealing with grade disputes?
We haven't had a lot of those, or I haven't heard of them. Do you have a standard rubric, like a really detailed rubric for grading, like major speeches and stuff?
So the short answer to that is no. Have some standardization, such as the required number and types of graded speeches, but we don't go as far as to stipulate how to turn the official learning objectives for the course into a rubric.
I guess that would maybe be one suggestion then. And I obviously don't know how your university operates, but like at UNO, we have a really clear rubric that goes with every major speech that's due. So then like the idea is that no matter what section a student is, they have the same requirements and they're graded in the same way. And so I think maybe that helps us with like we don't have those grade disputes because it's very clear like what they missed and like why they didn't, like let's say like why they didn't get an A or like how they can get an A. That's my suggestion.
We do that too because it takes out at least a little bit of the subjectivity, and then you've got everyone having kind of a coherent experience regardless of which section they're in. to an extent, as much as you can control for that. Sometimes as a training thing, we'll do grade norming. Like, so we'll all sit down together with the rubric and watch a presentation and we'll grade it and see kind of, you know, which is sort of interesting, you know, because sometimes something is obvious to me what the grade should be, and then someone else has a completely different thing, you know, so kind of making sure we're all on the same page and how we're evaluating and what we're looking for.
We do that as well as part of like our like assessment to make sure that faculty, yeah, again, are grading in a similar way. So then students do feel like, again, it doesn't matter what section I am in, I'm getting the same, a similar experience. Yeah, that's a great idea too.
And in the assignment design too, like making sure that there are clearly defined objectives for each assignment. So then that way too, that takes some of the interpretation out. Like in our program, you would think that adjuncts grow on trees in Boston, and they do, but not for communication. It's actually hard to find people with a speech background. So I end up sometimes with like theater people and they have a completely different kind of way of looking at the content than I would prefer. And, you know, so just making sure that we're looking at it from a rhetorical perspective and not a theater one and stuff like that. So that sometimes can help avoid, you know, because that's one thing that I've run into a lot where I find that sometimes it's not the assignment, it's the instructor in terms of how they're communicating about it or how they're teaching the content. And that can create, they're not doing anything wrong necessarily, but it's just that they're not telling the student something that they need to know maybe, or that kind of a thing.
Yeah, Lynn, I'm kind of with you on this. I haven't had a lot of complaints about my adjuncts about this, but I know my students are coming to me for everything. And I think part of it is, I don't know if your guys' administration is similar, but our administration has said we need to be flexible. And so basically I have no due dates. Like I'm like, please turn it in on this date, but like, I have to basically accept everything. My fear, so I haven't got a lot of challenges because I feel like I'm accommodating everyone. And so I do worry, you know, especially all these first year students in a couple of years, that's going to be the norm. And then they're going to accept, you know, yes, I was late, but you have to accommodate me. And so I guess my fear is more, is this going to be a problem moving forward? And have we sort of taught the students like, hey, you can challenge these things, or you can keep asking for things and you don't have to actually meet the requirements? Because my final speeches were due, I had them do asynchronous and they were due last night. And I woke up to just a big list of emails saying, hey, I couldn't get it in. Can I do it later? And I'm pulling my hair out saying, I'm gonna get grades in next week. I don't know what to do, but so I don't know. This is something we probably need to keep our eye on.
That's a really good point. We had our provost says we need to practice compassionate pedagogy, which is a very triggering phrase for me now. And, because I feel like,
Can you
sorry?
Can you say that phrase again?
Compassionate pedagogy.
Ah, okay.
Which I interpret as the checks have cleared, let them do whatever they want. But I'm not bitter. So I have, you know, maybe a third of my 2 flex hybrid classes that I have, where same kind of thing that Rich just identified, where it's open season. And I frankly feel kind of used and abused. And so I have a meeting about this next week, but one of the things that we've talked about doing to prevent that from happening is putting a hard stop on assignments. So, and you can do it in your learning management system, most likely. We use Canvas. So, you know, you tell the students like, listen, you know, we want you to get it in on time. But if, you know, you have COVID or whatever it is, and by the way, none of my nightmares have actually been COVID related. It's just, I think they were digging from the back benches to get warm bodies in the seats, because I think it's just some students not ready for prime time. But to put a hard stop on it and say, you know, you lock the assignment, you cannot submit it after this date. You know, maybe it's a week after the original due date or that type of a thing, so that you don't have, because I have some final last call. Like I have this one young woman who has not done a presentation from like 2 months ago. And it's making me nuts. And so I can't do it again next semester. You know, and especially too, I was on the phone with one of my adjuncts yesterday. She's got something like that, and the student wants an incomplete. And, you know, they're only paid, you know, through whatever, the second week in December for that semester, and that's it. You know, so it's not really fair to ask people who are part-time to continue on with a student from a past semester. You know, so it's figuring out, kind of setting those boundaries, and like, so we have to get that wiggle room between what our institutions want us to do and what they are requiring us to do, but where we're not ripping our hair out. And especially, you know, for our part-time faculty who have a whole other set of circumstances. So I think that's one thing that I'm going to try, and I hope it will work. Doing the hard stop and letting them know, like, that's it, and we're not going back on it. Does anyone have any other ideas for setting those boundaries, or something that worked for you? Did anyone have boundaries at all? It's hard to know. One thing I've experienced with part-time faculty this semester, and with myself personally too, but that triangulation between student support staff, students, and faculty. Has anyone had any issues with that? So in other words, you have a student support staff person advocating for a student based on what the student has told them, which may not be 100% the same story that you've experienced. So that's another kind of.
Jane, let me ask you a question of clarification. That by support staff, do you mean someone in, say, an office of, disability resource services, or that's what they call it at Pitt, something like that?
Yeah, we have layers. So we have student accessibility services, we have student success, we have the healing collaborative. So we have, and that's only 3. I think there's more. You know, so these are the people that will write to you and say, you know, Johnny just needs more time. Can you give it to him because they have stuff? So that's something that I've had to intercede on behalf of adjuncts, because sometimes they feel the pressure because they don't know who these people even are. You know, you get an email from some random person and it seems very official and very much like you've got to do what they're asking you to do. You know, so I don't know if that's something people have experienced before. Because that's another kind of advocacy.
Yeah, so we have a very interesting situation at Prairie State in that most of our academic deans are brand new academic deans this year. We had a bunch of turnover that happened during COVID, and that included our VP of Academic Affairs retiring, which meant our Dean of Liberal Arts and Science took over VP. Our president retired. We had a couple of deans retire. And so we've got an administrative staff that is completely new and completely interim. But so there's that, and some of them are not really familiar with their roles yet. Which is very frustrating in itself, but also our school is very open in terms of student access to deans. So our students can email and set an appointment with the dean anytime they want. They can walk right into the door. I mean, if we're on campus, and the deans will speak to them. And so we've had a couple of issues with our adjuncts. Typical students say it's basically students who have not been doing what they were supposed to be doing and then getting frustrated when the adjunct professor does what he or she says that they will do if the student doesn't do what they're supposed to do, right? So they don't turn in the work and they get a 0. And then they email the professor and the professor emails them back and says, you didn't turn your work in, you'll get a 0. And so, there have been some complaints about that. And because the deans are new and want to feel like they're doing a good job, in my opinion, they will take kind of the student's side instead of supporting the adjunct professor. And so I feel like although I'm like a kind, funny, goofy, silly kind of person, I feel like I've taken this role that's like, no, you cannot do that to them. They have classroom policies. And we are also hearing, we don't hear necessarily the words compassionate pedagogy together, but we're hearing things like you have to be compassionate and can you offer an extension? And, you know, we are offering extensions. We are being pretty compassionate, especially with students who are affected by COVID. And we're in the Chicago suburbs in an area where it has been particularly hard hit. And so everybody is being compassionate, but once you've like extended the deadline several times for the same student, you know, it's at a certain point you have to say, no, like you're not doing the work for this class. And so, you know, so I think those are the sorts of things that I feel like I'm having to take on, is advocating for, you know, and some of my, we're meeting remotely and we can't require them to come to sessions, like physical sessions, but I offer optional sessions for all of my classes, right? So they can get some additional help and answer questions. So my adjuncts started doing that. And then one student complained and said, well, she's offering this and she requires us to come. Well, that's not true. They're not requiring them to come. The student just says, right? And so then the dean, who doesn't know, says, you can't require them to come. Stop having the sessions. So then, because the dean has told the adjunct to stop having the sessions, she stops having the sessions, but they're not required. And she posts the recording upline. So, you know, like you can't, like the dean doesn't seem to be taking care of understanding the full situation. And this student complained and was lying in his complaint. You know, it is really tricky for them. And so I feel myself stepping in and being like, you cannot tell this adjunct what to do with her class.
Yeah, that's really frustrating. One thing that I tell my adjuncts to do, and they get eye rolly when I say it in the meeting, because I say it all the time, document, document, document. Keep track of everything. So even if you have a conversation with a student in person or even on Zoom or something like that, where you agree to, you know, you can make X up by such and such date, whatever, follow up with an email that documents it. Because that way, when these triangulations occur, and they do always, you've got that record of it. You know, I had a student success person come at me about this student who I lovingly nicknamed "What's the book about?" And "What's the book about?" He did ask me that question. I was like floored. He never did one thing, not one thing, the whole semester. He finally withdrew 2 weeks ago. Had not done one thing. He talked to the student success person. I had been on it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And long story short, they finally said he was having some problems, but now he's ready to work. This was in week 9. And so can you help him catch up? Well, after I chiseled myself off of the ceiling and was about to write the nastiest email ever written, she emailed me back again and said, oh, sorry, I just looked through the record. So she had a CVS receipt worth of an email thread of me, like, where's this guy? Somebody intercede. He's not, you know, says he'll do this, hasn't done this, whatever, this whole record of it. So you have to document it. So then that way you can say, hey, Dean, you know, check this out. This is what the students were told. This is the, you know, records. And then that way that can help you advocate too.
Yeah. I feel so bad for that adjunct, because as an adjunct, I mean, like, how horrible does that feel to feel like you aren't supported by the department or the unit that you work for? And
yeah, it was especially made difficult because she had another situation that was coming up, and she is so scared of making decisions now in her own class that she has been reaching out to me, and she's great. She's like fabulous. Like we, you know, when she gets a real job, which is going to be soon, because she is great. You know, we've got this great professor whose students love her and is doing a great job for us. And she feels she's second guessing all of her instincts for teaching, you know, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think there's so many student complaints because of some professors are not good at teaching remotely, right? And they are really struggling with getting it down. And so there are a lot of complaints. So they just assume that if a student has a complaint that it's somehow legitimate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle, and I try to have empathy for a staff person or a dean, like what their position is, and they want to advocate for the student, but I think sometimes it gets forgotten that like we all work together as a team, and the students are just passing through. We want each one that passes through to have a good experience and to learn and things like that, but that like we have to have protocols in place, and yes, we want to believe them and support them, but they aren't all. Some of them are game in the system. It's just the way it is. It's a numbers game. There's always going to be a certain number. And if we're not working together, then you mean you don't want to have faculty that doesn't feel valued or like they can teach, what they need to, or to have control of their classroom, because I think that's an important thing is to have part-time faculty feel like they have some sort of control and some sort of say. So. Any other thoughts on that topic? Tracy is just joining us. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, I'm sorry. I got double booked.
Oh, it
And
happened.
it went much longer than I thought it was going to.
No problem. Welcome. Where are you from, Tracy?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech. Oh, okay. You work with Brandy?
Brandy. I've only been here for a little over a year.
Oh, okay. What role do you have in terms of dealing with adjuncts?
I am a department head.
Okay, great.
So I hire a lot of adjuncts.
Okay, super. We were talking about some challenges right now that have come up. A little bit COVID related, not necessarily.
I think that one of the challenges we're experiencing is that sometimes our adjuncts aren't getting hired very fast or very efficiently. Or sometimes it happens that they get hired at the last minute. And before COVID, like before when you're teaching in a classroom, you can all you have to do is tell them the classroom. So even if they get worst case scenario, they get hired the day before or something. They just show up in the classroom and they're ready to go. But when you're teaching online, not easy. We've had problems where an adjunct doesn't have an email account yet, or doesn't have access to their LMS system, can't even post anything. And it creates a lot of problems, which I don't think that there's necessarily any answer that anyone can give other, some of you said or Jane, you were saying it's hard to find adjuncts. And I think that we have the same problem sometimes. And just this moving online has created another barrier that I don't think we really anticipated or thought about.
I think my name got put on a lot of courses so that I could add adjuncts in so that they could work on it until they had access. That was the only way we could figure out how to work around it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just even they have to usually be hired before they can get access to the LMS. And yeah. And that hiring process can be kind of onerous depending on how your institution works. Yeah, no, that's true too. Any other issues or topics that you want to explore? We have about 15 minutes. Either challenges or just ideas.
I have noticed that I've been able to hire adjuncts that are in a lot of different locations. And this definitely made that much easier. I've got some future adjuncts that are in Kansas and Texas, and that definitely can come in and provide some content and provide some expertise for us that we've not usually used before, because we've always thought of our adjuncts being here or being local for the most part. And so recognizing that our students can be successful in courses with adjuncts that are not local, I think gives us some more flexibility.
Oh, that's excellent. That's a really good point. We're not allowed to do that, even though you'd think it wouldn't matter if it's online. Yeah, but we're not allowed.
Our administration is okay with it. And especially now that they've seen what we can do, if we've got high quality and we can demonstrate that they've got good online teaching skills, then they don't have an issue with us hiring adjuncts that are from other locations.
And you would think that would actually make more sense. And well, I don't know, there might be legalities involved employment wise, but that's what they said as an excuse, but I live in another state, so I don't know. You always have to pay taxes in Massachusetts, so it doesn't matter where you live.
That's odd to me. You would think that they would want to hire a qualified person, and if location didn't matter.
Versus having someone who's not qualified.
Yeah, but local.
Meredith is asking about training. Yeah, for us, we have an instructional technology department, and just my good luck, I've always taken all their classes and workshops, and I took their online training. So mostly they do the training, but I can jump in because I'm qualified to do it. But that's how we do it. How does anyone else deal with training for tech
We
stuff?
have the same, it's the same kind of setup. I'm part of the digital learning team now, and like I helped to create the shell for the public speaking course, so it's even easier for us to help, or for me to help faculty and adjuncts. I think sometimes maybe the problem is that the adjunct doesn't know to come to us and get help. Like they struggle for so long. And I mean, I've had adjuncts come and talk to me who are crying, and I'm like, oh, I wish you would have come sooner because you don't need to do this alone. And so sometimes I think it's just like getting the word out there that there are places to get help, because adjuncts don't know, and then a lot of times like full-time faculty aren't telling them, or they don't know. And yeah,
that's something that I try to do, because sometimes, like you said, especially if they're new, they don't want to admit to the boss that they don't know how to do something. So I try to set people up with mentors, either other full-time faculty or kind of senior part-time faculty that are willing to do it, because I can't pay them. So that new people in particular have someone to reach out to ask the questions they may not feel comfortable asking me. Like I'm pretty easygoing, but sometimes they don't want to. Sometimes it's embarrassing because they'll ask someone else and then that person asks me, and like I get looped in, but but I'm totally fine with it. Like I'm not like, oh, you're not going to work here anymore. But so that's something that can be helpful with that is a little bit of a mentorship, kind of a light duty. And if they're on campus at the same time, if in regular times, they can go grab a coffee, that type of a thing. But so that's something that helps. Any other thoughts related to training for tech stuff? That's been probably one of the biggest hurdles.
Yeah, this is Meredith. I just found it to be really troublesome, all of the factors converging at once, specifically this fall with the pandemic, in that these part-timers were getting hired at the very last minute. We're talking like a Friday before classes start on Monday. They don't obviously have a lot of extra time to do trainings, to meet with someone or work through modules or whatever it is. So that to me was just extremely stressful. Me kind of being ultimately just kind of fell back on me to make sure that a dozen people knew how to teach online all of a sudden. So that was extremely stressful to work through. So I just would love to figure out a better process for that. I'm not sure, if there is a solution. I know this is just a really weird semester, but it was definitely hard.
Do you have the same crew for the spring semester?
I have a lot of returning and fewer new. I only have 3 new people, so it will be a lot more manageable, I think, in the spring. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what we're all hoping, right? We got through
better
this one.
2021.
So yeah, I don't know if the next one, because we're more familiar, if it'll be easier or if it'll just be more of a drag because we've just been doing it for too long. I'm not really sure. Does anyone have any? We're getting lower on time, so does anyone have any other?
I just have maybe a provocative thought. because Meredith's concern and Marlena's and even Tracy, who does the hiring, this having to support part-time faculty who are employees of the university is a huge challenge when we're dealing with the technology, some of which we're not as familiar with as we'd like to be, right? Because this stuff is changing all the time. And I guess I'm in favor of pressing the university to play an important role in this support, because if they're going to rely on part-time faculty, which we all agree is a fragile, precarious position, chronically underpaid, etc., then it is, in my view, incumbent upon universities to step up and support those faculty and the departments who are forced to hire them because of the lack of full-time positions and so on and so forth. So I don't want this to turn into a rant, because that's not what it is. I think there is a genuine and legitimate, labor practice argument here for calling on universities to step up their game if they're not providing support. For example, online workshops, right? Here's how you set up your Canvas account, part 1. Here's how you create assignments on Canvas, part 2, and so on and so forth. How to do Zoom, how to do this, that, and the next. Here are some kinds of ways to use a breakout room in a productive context, so that your 1-hour class doesn't drag or whatever. I think that's a fairly straightforward exercise. So I would just press for some advocacy to get the universities to play an important role here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges of this, bye Marlena, she has to leave us. If this has been, even in the best case scenario, I think it's been the demand, so that even if the colleges do supply some of these things, like we did have some training, but that, like, the staffing level isn't enough for, because we've sort of been kind of holding it together with duct tape, since March. So I think that's been one of the challenges, so that even if you're at an institution that is willing, it hasn't been able to necessarily meet the demand, because they're not going to be willing to hire people. We did hire some temporary people, I think. But I think that's been kind of the challenge of that. But yeah, that's an excellent point. And you have to wonder if going forward, if they will build out a little bit more to be able to be prepared, for something like this. Because it'll be interesting to see after this all goes away, like, are we still going to have classes like there's no snow days anymore, right? That type of a thing. We may be using these modalities more, and that's an excellent point. Are they going to support it and provide the training?
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of shared sacrifice and making sure that the people who are doing the sacrificing aren't the same ones over and over again. That would be my only reason to press universities to, spend some more money, make a case to the legislature, whatever they can do. They may not get the results that they want or we want or both, but to be at least showing that they're taking some action and taking these concerns seriously.
And that's part of our responsibility potentially too, right? As supervisors, to at least, start the ball rolling with what we're experiencing. What we're seeing is figuring out who the stakeholders are in our institutions that can move the ball a little bit. We're very pecking order oriented. So like if I have an idea for something, then normally I would email my chair. He would send it to the dean. The dean might send it to the provost, or that type of a thing. So sometimes too, it's cutting through those layers. And unfortunately, we're not running into people in elevators anymore. That's sometimes the better way to initiate something than in the more formal process. But, so figuring out kind of where those gaps are, and to be able to at least attempt to advocate, for our part-time people and for ourselves too, right? Because we're taking on a lot more kind of responsibility and pressure with dealing with some of these issues in our roles as supervisors, in addition to as faculty. I mean, I asked one of our student success people in a moment of frustration, I said, who's going to write me a note? For why I can't do X, Y, Z. So any other kind of thoughts? We just have a couple minutes left. This was a great conversation. There's lots to think about. Any takeaways or further questions?
Well, I appreciate what Lynn said. And I think a big takeaway from all this has been how much our university depends on adjuncts, yet does not equip them the way they should be equipped. And so I've just really seen sort of that half-baked plan, and because I want our adjuncts to succeed and I want our students to get quality instruction, kind of trying to step in and, fill that gap. But then to your point, Jane, it's also not necessarily fair that we continue to take on extra responsibilities when I'm also teaching and I'm not getting a course release for this. I'm not getting a penny more for this, So it's almost been like an extra job for me this semester. Right. So
well, that's it.
I know we don't want to rant, but I appreciate
that's what we're here to do, actually. Rant.
Just to kind of get that off my chest. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot. And a crisis sort of shines a light maybe on where the holes are in the fabric. And, so sort of once the dust settles, we can be, every institution needs to take a look at what they need to fix and maybe what they need to not do anymore and so on in order to, because there'll also be a rebuilding, because most institutions are also taking a huge financial hit, so that's, and that's why I think sometimes some of the things have gone the way that they have. Like there's kind of no standard for what online means anymore, what that should include. And it is, we're held together by duct tape. So they know they're going to get a certain number of complaints. And if they're smart, they will be more judicious in how they communicate those to the faculty who are just doing the best that they can in very difficult circumstances, which many people are not prepared for. Because like teaching online is different than teaching in person. So it's a different skill set. So it's a lot. Well, it is 2:00. Thank you so much for coming today. Hang in there because it's been a wild ride, has it not? And good luck finishing up this semester.